Thank you. Hate speech, xenophobia, and extremism of all kinds are symptoms of a more deep-seated crisis which has taken possession of Europe. This conference will examine the symptoms and explore the ways of dealing with them. I should like to say a few words about the crisis itself. It started out as a financial crisis, but the way the authorities have dealt with it, or more exactly, failed to deal with it, has turned it into a political one. The euro crisis is now endangering the European Union. Let me explain what I mean. When it was only an inspiration, the European Union was an immensely attractive idea that fired people's imagination, including mine. I regarded it as the embodiment of an open society, an association, a voluntary association of sovereign states who are willing to sacrifice part of their sovereignty for the common good. They shared a common history in which the French Revolution, with its slogan of liberty, equality, and fraternity, loomed large. Building on that tradition, member states formed a union based on equality and not dominated by any one nation or a nationality. The euro crisis has now turned the European Union into something radically different. Far from being a voluntary association, the Eurozone is now held together by harsh discipline. Far from being an association of equals, it has become a hierarchical arrangement where the center is dictating policy and the periphery is increasingly subordinated to the center. And instead of fraternity and solidarity, hostile stereotypes proliferate. When the European Union was formed, the process of integration was spearheaded by a small group of far-sighted statesmen who subscribed to the principles of open society and practiced what Karl Popper called piecemeal social engineering. They recognized that perfection is unattainable, so they set limited objectives and firm timelines, and then mobilized the political will for a small step forward, knowing full well that when they achieved it, its inadequacy would become apparent and require further steps. The process fed on its own success, very much like a financial bubble. That is how the coal and steel community was gradually transformed into the European Union, step by step. France and Germany used to be in the forefront of the effort. When the Soviet Empire started to disintegrate, Germany's leaders realized that reunification was possible only in the context of a more united Europe, and they were prepared to make considerable sacrifices to achieve it. When it came to bargaining, they were willing to contribute a little more and take a little less than the others, thereby facilitating agreement. At that time, German statesmen used to assert that Germany has no independent foreign policy, only a European one. This led to a dramatic acceleration of the process, which culminated in the signing of the Maastricht Treaty in 1992 and the introduction of the euro in 2002. And this was followed by a period of consolidation. Then came the crash of 2008, which originated in America, but caused greater problems in Europe than anywhere else. The financial authorities responded to the collapse of financial credit by substituting the credit of the state. After the collapse of Lehman Brothers, they announced that no other systemically important financial institution would be allowed to fail. Shortly thereafter, the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, asserted that the guarantee had to be provided by each state individually and not by Europe collectively. And that was the beginning of the euro crisis, because it revealed a flaw in the construction of the euro, which neither the authorities nor the financial markets were aware, and which is still not fully recognized today. Namely, by creating the European Central Bank, the member states exposed their government bonds to the risk of default. Let me explain this a little further. Developed countries that issue bonds in their own currency never default, because they can always print money. Their currency may depreciate, but the risk of default is absent. By contrast, less developed countries that borrow in a foreign currency may run out of currency reserves. When a financial crisis hit Greece, the financial world suddenly discovered with a shock that the member countries of the euro had put themselves into the position of third world countries that became heavily indebted in a foreign currency. There is a close parallel between the euro crisis and the international banking crisis in 1982. At that time, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the international financial authorities saved the financial system by lending just enough money to the heavily indebted countries to enable them to avoid default, but imposed strict austerity on the debtor countries, pushing them into a lasting depression. In the 1980s, Latin America suffered what is now referred to as a lost decade. Today, Germany is playing the same role as the IMF did then. There is a center, led by Germany, and a periphery consisting of the heavily indebted countries, and the center is imposing a regime of strict austerity, which is perpetuating the division of the Eurozone into center and periphery. Economic conditions are continuing to deteriorate, and they are causing immense human suffering. The innocent victims of the austerity policy, who are frustrated and angry, provide the feeding ground for hate speech, xenophobia, and all forms of extremism.
So there you go. Out of a 14-minute speech, it took him 9.5 minutes to force mention hate speech, and how he's linking it's all coming from financial difficulties brought on because the euro, because they created a European Central Bank. So that's George's explanation for it all. There's a little bit more. I'll let it play out, but isn't it mad what they link in? What they try to link in. This is why we have to have this hate speech law, because people are frustrated with the banking system. That's why we need a hate speech law.
The fact is that the policies that are designed to preserve the financial system and the euro are transforming the European Union into the opposite of an open society. There is an apparent contradiction between the financial requirements of the euro and the political objectives of the European Union. The financial requirements could be met by replicating the arrangements that prevailed in the global economy in the 1980s and dividing the euro into a center and a periphery. But that could not be reconciled with the principles of an open society in Europe. Now, there are ways in which the policies pursued to preserve the euro could be modified so as to meet the political objectives of the European Union. For instance, the government bonds of individual countries could be replaced by Eurobonds. But I won't go into the details because they are complicated and technical. I want to make a...
In other words, he doesn't want to tell you how the euro is going to scheme. The euro is going to scheme people out of their savings. That's what it's going to do.
Much simpler point. If there is a contradiction between the financial requirements of the euro and the political objectives of the European Union, the political objectives of the European Union ought to take precedence. Unfortunately, that is not the case. The financial problems are pressing and they are taking up all the attention of our politicians. They are so preoccupied with the crisis of the day that they have no time to ponder the long-term consequences of their actions. As a result, they continue on the current course, which perpetuates the division between center and periphery.
I don't know how many times he said center and periphery in this video. A lot. But he's, once again, there's the pass in the buck again. It's your politicians' fault. It's your politicians' fault. When we all know it's just a game to these people. Like, they just treat all of our lives is just a game for them to see how much they can scam out of us. See how much pressure and fear they can keep us under while scamming the fuck out of everybody.
This is such a dismal prospect that it must not be allowed to happen. Originally, the European Union was conceived as an instrument of solidarity and cooperation. Today, Europe is held together by grim necessity. That's not the Europe we want. We want to reverse. We must reverse.
Yeah, reverse it. Break up the EU. Europe is great. Break up the EU. It's the only thing he probably didn't even mean to say it like that. But that's the way it came out, George. Break up the EU. Get rid of it.
This intolerable transformation. One way or another, we must recapture the spirit of solidarity and shared values that used to fire people's imagination. That is the purpose of the Open Society Initiative for Europe that I have launched recently. I greatly welcome this conference, which will examine the various forms of hate speech and xenophobia and explore ways to resist them.
Making sure to get xenophobia in there as well, by the way. Yeah, xenophobia is the new anti-Semite, you know? It's the new anti-Semitic card that they're going to play a lot more of. And keep an eye out, you're going to hear a lot more of Islamophobia that's going to be spread everywhere. Because they're filling all the European countries with these Arabs, these Islamists. that are just, they're going to try come over here. You've seen me other videos where Christians are talking to them and they're like, why do you want to come to Europe and spread Islam everywhere? And they're like, well, there's no point in staying in the Middle East where most of the people there follow Islam. So I'm going to reach out. We're going to come over to Europe and we're going to convert everyone. All right, then. Me as a Christian, can I go over to a country in the Middle East and spread Christianity? And the Arabs turn around and go, no, of course you can't, because there's only one religion, and that's Islam. You know, that's why they're going to push Islamophobia, to mask that, to mask.
I hope it will be the beginning of a successful effort. You can count on the active support of the Open Society Initiative for Europe, or CIFE for short, and I look forward to cooperate with the Norwegian government, which has sponsored this conference, in supporting this effort. Thank you. Thank you.
So Norway must be next on their agenda, huh? But there you have it, out of the horse's own mouth, and the way he talks about Europe being set up to bring, to have more of an open society as a continent. It was tried before with the League of Nations, They have to keep trying over and over. All of it is to consolidate power down so they can control it easier. That's the whole point of the EU. Bring all these countries together and then put someone in charge of them all, and then it'll be so much easier. Then you can just write laws for all those countries at once. Huh? As simple as that.